Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Brief with your host, Tone Face. Jimmy was unable to join us today, but let's welcome the return of Giacomo Zucco. I just unmuted you, man. And
Thank
how
you.
you been? When did I see you last? It wasn't that long ago. It's been a while on this video, but what was the
Yeah.
last conference we were at together?
We missed out each other in breaking Bitcoin. So probably the last time was what was the? Oh, it was in Odessa. It was the
That's
BIP in
right.
Odessa.
That's right. It was in Odessa. Yeah, that was fun. I love going to Ukraine.
Same. It was my first conference, as you know, as I explained in the live I did with you. It was my first public speech in Bitcoin ever in 2013, and so it's a tradition by now. It's a little bit. I mean, there is a little bit of diversity from the project point of view, some shitcoinery, but it's a great place, and the people there. I mean, Pavel, the organizer, and Anastasia, they're very good at organizing everything. Is a lot of fun.
All right, let's jump into our stories over this past weekend. We're gonna start off. You know what? Let's start off with mining, and then we'll head on over to what everyone really wants to talk about, Tether. So we have Braiins, I guess Slush and Braiins. I'm still always get confused on their branding. Now, I'm not a I don't understand mining all that well. I mean, everyone watched me almost get electrocuted setting up my only miner, and that was a funny video. And so I'm still kind of new to the whole mining thing, basically because I always travel the world, and it's kind of hard to do these interesting projects. So do you know much about this new mining stack? What does it do? Because I don't. If you don't, then maybe we'll save it for next time, and we'll both read up on it some more.
Nothing insightful, I'm afraid. Only platitudes. Like I know the Braiins guy. We had them together at the Understanding Bitcoin, where they presented the firmware upgrade, the devivilization of the Bitmain, etc. But I don't know. I never had any of these any of the machines with the new stack. So maybe it's better if we ask. Stick and the guy to give us some insight and we comment it more.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to get one of them on a show to discuss it
Yeah,
better. So,
that would be nice.
Giacomo, do you mind? Do you have a miner running somewhere?
Yeah, I do have a home. So I did have several ASICs for research purposes in the office in Milan until 2018. Now that I don't have the office in Milan anymore, I have a very small operation in Bulgaria, but it's mostly it's not profitable anymore. It was never really profitable. It's mostly for research, and I have one Avalon at home just to keep it there and to pretend I can do something with it, but I don't even use it anymore.
Yeah, I have one Avalon as well over at my cabin up in the woods, and of course I have it connected to Slush Pool. But that's all I pretty much know. All right, so we're gonna skip this. We're gonna go to something that is very very interesting and insightful. A liquid sidechain is finally being put to use with they hit it off with a bang, right? So they are moving over Tether from the Omni layer, which I always questioned the stability of the Omni layer. And we were all been waiting for, hey, when is the liquid sidechain going to be used for something? Because Blockstream is great at engineering, not exactly, great at promotion and PR and media releases. And here we go. So it looks like Tether is migrating over from the Omni layer over to the liquid sidechain. You can read all about it here in Blockstream's blog post. You can also read about it in CoinDesk. Now, a couple of interesting things here, right? Now, what does this mean? Well, first of all, it means that Tether can now be, moved around with the security of the Bitcoin blockchain. But here's the really good stuff, right? Um, with Tether entering the network, it will now be possible to make atomic swaps between liquid Bitcoin and liquid Tethers, a future that the firm says will offer lower counterparty risk for those carrying out OTC trades. Further, Liquid's faster block times will allow traders to quickly complete transfers of fiat between exchanges, making it more efficient to arbitrage trades. As far as strong assets goes, Blockstream's green wallet that you used to manage, Giacomo, so you can tell us more about this. But like, this is a really important sentence right here. Liquid Bitcoin and liquid tethers will be able to be carrying out basically as atomic swaps. That means that you can convert from volatile Bitcoin to stablecoin Tether. Now, we can debate whether Tether is stable or not, right? That's a separate debate, right? Let's assume Tether is stable at $1. You can now go back and forth between Bitcoin and Tether without a middleman. This is like amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. So I'm, as you said, I have several layers of, let's say, conflicts of interest with this story. Partly because I'm very close to the Blockstream Green team and history. I used to work for Lawrence in when it was called Green Address for a little while, and I'm very fond of the application. It's my favorite wallet. Is the wallet I use every day, and it's only so far the only wallet which is managing liquid assets. So it's an open standard, so everybody can implement in their wallet a liquid asset capability. Liquid confidential assets capability. But in this case, it's only on green. The second reason why there is some conflict of interest here, but I guess I could present it as a very insightful position, is that Tether decided to move from the Omni layer and from the combination Omni plus ERC20 to several different networks. And the reason they want to do that, in my opinion, is very smart. Tether is basically a legal arbitrage solution. Basically, what they do is to manage a primary market, which is completely regulated with KYC and AML and everything. But then when you go to the primary market with Tether, you give $1, you get one Tether dollar. What happens is that the secondary market is instead completely free, and you can use that for a lot of arbitrage, not just financial arbitrage, but even regulatory arbitrage opportunities. Of course, in order to stay that way, they need a technological infrastructure which is truly decentralized and sustainable. And Omni, unfortunately, was neither of those things, because the development of Omni was basically only around Tether recently, because it was the only real application of Omni. And also Omni was not, in my opinion, a truly sustainable asset protocol, because it was using the Bitcoin blockchain to store asset metadata, which is something which basically bloats the Bitcoin blockchain, is not sustainable in the long run, and it creates incentives problem. And the same goes, but even worse, if we want, with ERC20 alternative. So it's even worse. The Ethereum network is a clusterfuck. So we know that it was not sustainable at all.
No, Giacomo, the Ethereum network is not a clusterfuck. They are now using the Bitcoin Cash blockchain.
Yeah, exactly.
As their scaling solution. They have solved all of their problems.
Exactly. So it's like it's becoming a meta clusterfuck. So even better. So what Tether is doing is something smart. They are basically trying to use the same application across several different networks. Usually when I meet the sentence blockchain agnostic, I become uber skeptical, because I mean, what does it mean blockchain agnostic? We just have one functional blockchain. But in the case of Tether, what they need is actually to claim that the ownership of the asset in the secondary market is completely and totally independent from them. They cannot blacklist, they cannot seize funds, they cannot confiscate. In order to claim that, they cannot use a protocol that is basically only developed by them, which is Omni. So they started to experiment on several different alternatives. Some alternatives, I think, they are really like Tron and stuff like that. They're a little bit cringe. But two alternatives were really exciting for me. One was Liquid that we are going to talk about right now, and one was the other one that Tether will move to a little bit further in time, which is RGB, the RGB and Spectrum protocol, which is basically a new version of colored coin with less problems and based on Lightning Network, so a layer 3 solution. And there was some announcement by Tether of moving Tether dollars on RGB and on Liquid. And finally, Liquid is here. I think it's a very good application, mostly because things like Counterparty and Omni, they have a fundamental problem. The problem is that they are not incentive compatible. That means that if you imagine to move, I mean, Tether market cap is very huge right now. If you imagine to move that kind of value over the Bitcoin blockchain, that can actually mess up a little bit the incentives in Bitcoin. Let's assume, for example, that you have a transaction which carries just one Bitcoin, but it carries also a wallet consolidation of Tether of a couple of $1 billion of value. So now miners, they will be paid in Bitcoin with fees in order to give block space to and eventually to give immutability to the Bitcoin transaction. But then again, there are incentives maybe in the Tether layer in order to undo some transaction, to reorg, and that's potentially very bad because not only you have the same limitation of Bitcoin, you have the scalability limitation that in Omni are even worse because you cannot even do SPV in Omni. Also, you have the privacy limitation of Bitcoin, but even worse because if the anonymity set in Bitcoin is huge, the anonymity set of Tether on Omni on Bitcoin is super small, so you have basically zero privacy.
Yeah, hey Giacomo, since you brought up the privacy angle, all transactions on Liquid, whether they're Liquid Bitcoins or Liquid Tethers, they're pretty anonymous. They're pretty private. Like you don't. There's lots of privacy inside the Liquid blockchain.
Yeah,
right?
So the privacy model is similar to Bitcoin, is pseudo-anonymity of addresses, but the great improvement is the confidentiality of the amounts and of the asset type. So there is not the same kind of anonymity of Monero or Zcash where you mess up, where in Zcash not really because nobody uses Z transaction, but theoretically at least, you can mix together people and you don't know who is spending to who. In a Liquid, you know which address is spending to which address, but you don't know how much and you don't know which kind of asset, which would actually make blockchain analytics basically worthless, because if you don't know the amounts, you cannot create meaningful graphs of connecting the transactions basically. So it's pretty anonymous. It's not yet there, meaning that in order to have anonymity, you need two things. You need a system that can provide anonymity, and you need a lot of users and a lot of liquidity to give you a strong anonymity set. If let's assume that only 5 people are trading 3 Tether dollars on Liquid, and other 3 people are trading Bitcoin, it's still not very anonymous because it's 6 people at all. But the point is that, but the good thing is that the anonymity set in Liquid, since you don't know which asset you are moving, is global across every asset. So it's not just the Tether anonymity set, it's the Liquid anonymity set. When Liquid will have a lot of people trading assets and LBTC and stuff, then the anonymity property of this network are, I have to say, pretty good. The confidential asset technology is great. Indeed, what we're trying to do right now with RGB project is to copy the same confidential asset structure, just putting it on top of the different commitment scheme of RGB.
Yeah, Giacomo, tell us more about RGB. Is there a website I can pull up, or?
Yeah, I think there is. Let me check a little bit, but I think that if you search for it, you will find RGB org. Let me check it. Well, RGB. If you search for RGB GitHub, you arrive to the repository, which is where there is the README, which is already pretty self-explanatory. And yeah, these the specs, and you expand the README, and there is an explanation of the protocol. Basically, the idea comes from a very old discussion with Peter Todd for a common client, and Peter presented for assets this model, which is called the client-side validation model. So this is the general idea, trying to simplify it. It's a mistake to try to use the Bitcoin blockchain to store metadata about the transaction. What you want is actually a peer-to-peer communication of asset metadata, including the signature of the asset transfer, and you want to use the blockchain only as a anti-double spending measure. So what RGB does is basically using the blockchain only to to prevent double spending of the assets, but all the information of the assets, unlike Omni, unlike ERC20, unlike Counterparty, they are not on the blockchain. They get passed from each other using a protocol which is basically the Lightning Network protocol, and so everybody will pass to each other a off-chain proof of ownership, and only the anti-double spending will use the blockchain structure. So if you move an RGB asset over Lightning, which is called Spectrum in particular, the Spectrum module, then you will not even use the Bitcoin blockchain at all. And if you use an RGB asset without the Lightning Network, you will use the blockchain only to avoid the double spending. Of course, the proof layer of this is something very simple. It's just a chain of signatures. So we can replace it with something more fun. Indeed, there is a part of the team that is now trying to move the confidential assets protocol of Blockstream, which is great, which is we provide the anonymity we were talking about on top of the RGB commitment scheme. But our goal would be to make it, I mean, this is not really alternative to liquid confidential assets. It's more like complementary. Liquid confidential assets is by any measure, by any metric, a better, more advanced project. Cryptographically speaking, is a badass project. Is coming from years of work of the best mind in Bitcoin, basically. While RGB is a way to make a similar thing, way more simple, way less advanced, but which can survive eventually outside the Liquid Federation. So the problem with Liquid is that as long as the security assumption of the Liquid Federation hold, Liquid confidential assets is probably the best asset protocol you can find around. But the security assumption of Liquid are not like eternally guaranteed. So RGB is an effort to have an option to, let's say, peg out the assets from the Liquid chain on the main chain and on the Lightning Network.
All right. No, this sounds really, really exciting. So are we now expecting the Omni layer to just, weather and die? Now that was the first ICO, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was called Mastercoin back then, and it was basically the first major ICO. I think that BitShare probably made some pseudo ICO a little bit before, but it was the first, let's say, mainstream ICO. And then they screwed up a little bit, so they rebranded to Omni later on because Mastercoin was not a great brand. And I mean, I spoke with people managing Omni with Tether, and they are pretty knowledgeable and decent people. But the project itself was probably, I think it's a relic of some embarrassing past of Bitcoin 2.0 protocol. So it's good that we move to something more, I mean, more reliable and especially less conflicting with the Bitcoin security model, and more sustainable, more private, and more scalable.
So, I mean, we've discussed this before kind of privately. Now, at the next Understanding Bitcoin conference in Malta, we're going to probably, a good portion of that conference will now be dedicated to liquid sidechain. Last year, we didn't talk about it at all, but at this upcoming one, this is going to be big because I mean, I never really understood the value proposition of Ethereum. I never understood why people needed decentralized smart contracts. I still question it, But if you're going to do it, can you now use the liquid sidechain, or if not yet, very, very soon with RGB and other similar projects right on the Bitcoin network?
So let's start saying that I agree with you that I'm still skeptical that people will even need any kind of complex smart contract. In Ethereum, they're still trying to do a multi-sig which doesn't break. But the point is that the contracts which are used more frequently right now are just contracts in order to move around tokens. So even assuming that there is some reasonable use case for tokens, and I think Tether is among the most reasonable uses for tokens, together with.
Yeah, no, its volume is pretty much same as Bitcoin. Like I think like Tether's volume is probably almost as big as all the other shitcoins combined, I would guess.
Yeah, I'm skeptical about Tether being a long-term monetary solution because Tether is politically more fragile. But as far as working on the field goes, Tether is working for something right now. Is as a use case, is a token that works, that is useful for something. And I would say that the only other cases that I know are like collectibles, like rare papers and stuff like that. So the thing is that people don't use.
Speaking of rare pepes, so rare pepes were launched on the Counterparty blockchain, right? And Counterparty was another one. Like I remember back in the day, back in the heyday of the Bitcoin Uncensored podcast, and the two of them were, always all about Counterparty. And Counterparty is kind of like Hyperledger. No matter how many times people deeply involved in Hyperledger tried explaining it to me, I would look at them with like this dumb face saying, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand the need for this. And that was also me and Counterparty. Like, I remember when Counterparty was coming out, and everyone's like, oh, you got to buy these assets on Counterparty. I'm like, this makes no sense to me. Like their structure made no sense. Their use case made no sense. I think if it wasn't for rare pepes, that just like Omni with Tether, if it wasn't for rare pepes, that thing would have died already. So when are rare pepes going to move over to the liquid sidechain to once again destroy another one of these useless layers like Counterparty?
Oh, I'm actually flirting with rare pepes people since a lot of time in order to have them on RGB, because I'm convinced that they are the only other legit use case for some kind of token. But back to my Counterparty is basically like Omni. I think it was a little bit better than Omni because they didn't launch an ICO. They actually they had their scam coin, the XCP scam coin. But instead of launching an ICO, they did a proof of burn. So you have to burn Bitcoin in order to trustlessly acquire one of their tokens. But the point is that nobody uses complex smart contracts. So the only thing that you need to do is basically sometimes represent a unit of something and move it over across different people. That's the most important smart contract you have to do. And then on top of that use case, you can do maybe multi-sigs, you can do coin joins, you can do Lightning Network, and these are useful smart contracts. So in these regards, Liquid doesn't provide a general purpose smart contract. Neither it should, and neither does RGB or Spectrum. They only provide the normal Bitcoin functionalities. The thing about Liquid is that being a separate network, you can try to experiment a little bit more. So Liquid has a general purpose smart contract project. It's called Simplicity. It's like a formally verifiable, mission critical, secure critical, safety critical language. So it's not like Solidity, which is a bad clone of JavaScript. It's actually a language created for security, for financial security, for auditability, cost and time execution, determinism. So it's created ad hoc for financial contracts. It's not yet live on Liquid. I don't know when it will be, but you can take a look. I think in the Element projects, if you search for Simplicity, we will see the language. But it's not a language to do DAO kind of science fiction project. It's mostly in order to create some kind of very deterministic, very easy to audit financial contracts. So eventually Liquid will be able to do complex contracts. So far, the only thing you can do and the only thing you need to do sometimes is to issue and move over some tokens.
All right, Giacomo, so last tech question, and then maybe we'll spend a few minutes talking about the philosophical side of Tether. So this one is coming to us from Ivan on Tech, who is saying Liquid being a permissioned sidechain. I'm not sure I agree that Liquid is a permissioned sidechain, but he says Liquid being a permissioned sidechain, what influence does Blockstream have over the participants, and is it problematic in your view?
So it's very difficult to use the term permissioned and permissionless. I think if you have to choose, you can go with permissioned, because you always choose the more strict terminology in order to be realistic. The point is that so if you right now, without any kind of permission and any kind of authorization, you guy listening at home, you go to download the Liquid client, and you install it and you compile it or whatever, and you install it and you're running, you can use the Liquid network without asking for any permission. So what you can do is you can create an asset on Liquid, you can move an asset on Liquid, you can receive Liquid Bitcoin and spend Liquid Bitcoin. You can always, you can even without asking any permission, block a Bitcoin in the Liquid multi-sig address and generate for yourself a Liquid Bitcoin. So you can peg in your Bitcoin from the mainnet to Liquid. What you cannot do without asking permission, which is important, is to peg out. So if you have a Tether asset, you can move it around and it's completely permissionless. If you want to peg out LBTC on the main chain, then only the federation of the fiduciaries can allow you to do that. Basically, they are exchanges. So you may be required to ask for permission in order to peg out, which is a very important part of Liquid. Of course, there are some tricks. For example, as long as there is people wanting to enter Liquid with LBTC, so if you want to exit from LBTC to BTC, you can just propose an atomic swap right now on chain, but you can do it more efficiently eventually with Lightning. And so you can exchange your LBTC with one BTC without asking for any permission. But in order to do that, you need a demand to enter Liquid by someone else. So as long as there is demand to enter Liquid, you can exit Liquid without asking for permission. The second level of permission is basically censorship. So since there is no mining in Liquid, there is a federation of these N fiduciaries that are signing the blocks. So it's based on proof of authority in a way. They could just stop signing, censoring you. In Bitcoin, that cannot really happen, because if a majority of mining starts to censoring, it will be economically priced out by miners that actually will want to provide block space. But in Liquid, the fiduciaries can just decide to stop signing. There are two good news about that. The first good news is that Liquid is not just a bunch of people running a software on their computer that can do whatever they want. Liquid is run on these hardware secure modules, HSMs, which are tamper resistant. That means that the people running Liquid as fiduciaries, they cannot arbitrarily change the code to enforce any kind of different behavior. They will have to break it, and that will basically break down. And the second good news, so they cannot do arbitrary stuff. The second good news is that thanks to confidential assets, they don't know how many Bitcoins I am moving, or if I'm moving Bitcoins or issued asset that I created myself, or Tether or whatever. So censorship is difficult, because even if block signers may censor transactions in theory, they cannot, because they cannot see transactions clearly, they cannot know what I'm transacting and how much, and they cannot censor selectively without breaking down the HSM machine, which is tamper resistant.
All right, thanks for all that info. So we're gonna close out the whole Tether story. CoinDesk is reporting that millions in crypto is crossing the Russia-China border daily. Now, this is interesting. Chinese reporters in Russia Chinese importers in Russia are buying up to 30 million a day of Tether from Moscow's over-the-counter trading desk. They use the cryptocurrency to send large sums back to their home country, which has strict capital controls. Previously, the merchants used Bitcoin for this, but when the market crashed in 2018, they switched to Tether, which is designed to maintain parity with the US dollar. Despite long-standing questions about USDT's collateral in the market, nobody actually cares if Tether is backed or not. Now, we actually explored this a while ago in that people don't seem to care that Tether is now officially only 75% backed. And the US government is trying to shut Tether down. And we also brought up on the show the idea that if there is so much currently there is so much Tether in circulation, and even if the US government shows up and confiscates all of the underlying dollars, the industry can just say, you know what? We trust the, we trust the printing of new Tethers is potentially more responsible than the printing of fiat currencies. And we're just going to assume that one Tether is $1 and it doesn't even need to be fully backed because the stupid US government keeps trying to prevent us from doing commerce, right? This is the whole thing. Like I'm watching these like sanctions on Iran, all of this. There were hearings today where the government is like, well, how are we going to stop Iran from from being able to feed their country, right? Basically is what they're saying. And like, I don't understand how dumb people in government actually are. It's the responsibility of the Iranian government to get around American capital controls. That's their job, okay? If the Iranian government is not capable of getting around US capital controls, then the people in their government could get overthrown, killed, whatever, okay? And new people will be put in power. It's their job to try and save their country from their perspective, okay? And I don't understand how people don't understand that in first world countries that want to put sanctions on other countries in today's technological world. So I find this story very, very interesting. And again, this is another one of these things that people keep saying Bitcoin to the moon, Bitcoin to the moon. And this is yet another example that shows that Bitcoin has a long way to go because it is still too volatile. And if you think this is some kind of an endorsement for your shitcoin, it's not. Your shitcoin is 1,000 times worse than Bitcoin for this purpose.
Yeah.
Or Giacomo.
No, I think the Bitcoin has basically two purposes. One is to free money from state censorship and state control. And the other is to free money from state manipulation at the base layer. So what Tether does is half of is just one of these two goals. So Bitcoin does both, and I think Bitcoin does both in a long-term sustainable way, while Tether does one in what I think is not really long-term sustainable. I'm thinking decades. I mean, I would use Tether right now to send money in Iran. I will not use Tether to leave money to my grandchildren because it's not a long-term socially scalable solution. So far, it's working basically for two reasons. One, you just mentioned it, which is when you establish a peg, it's not easy. When you establish a monetary use, basically, using a conversion rate, a credible conversion, then even if the conversion is shut down at a certain point, the monetary use of the asset could continue for a while. There are some historical examples of that. One is, for example, the Iraqi Silver Eagle. There are a lot of examples of states that collapse, but since the central bank has collapsed, then people know that they cannot print more of that money. And since the market is already accepting that as money, the trust in that money can continue even without a strong, like a legal tender law or something like that, even without a strict convertible, because the peg was used at the beginning to bootstrap a monetary liquidity, and that can remain for a very long run, even when the peg is down. Also, the case is that and that's also, if you think about it, as a fiat money managed to remain after Nixon canceled the gold convertibility completely. So dollars were a convertible note for gold. And then at a certain point, the government say you cannot convert it for gold anymore, but the market is already using that. So it will take a while to be demonetized and to fall out of consume. So that's what happens with Tether, even if there is no convertibility anymore. Also, people knows that there is convertibility, because I think there are good reasons for the market to think that right now people managing Tether are pretty smart. I mean, they manage to, I don't think, and I always get Tether people mad when I say this, but I don't think Tether is sustainable long term, because you have many counterparty risk on top of each other. You have the counterparty risk of Tether, and you have the counterparty risk of the bank custodying the assets of Tether, and then you have the counterparty risk of the government issuing the bonds, which constitutes the reserve of the bank doing a reserve for Tether. So there are a lot of counterparty risk, but Tether people right now prove to be, I think, among the smarter people in this market. So they prove to be resilient to political attacks. That means that I will not use it for the long run. Also because you said, let's face it, Bitcoin is volatile. So Bitcoin created a monetary policy which is completely independent from the dollar. And that comes with great powers in the future, because eventually our monetary policy will be way better than the Federal Reserve. But in the short term, that means creating price discovery for a new kind of asset, which will take a lot of time and which create a lot of volatility. I mean, you can live with Bitcoin priced seminaries and stuff, and you can live pretty consistently, but you know that volatility can be a problem for accounting. Basically, it's very difficult to account with Bitcoin.
Yeah, and then every time I hear of these, like, the Bcash people talking about how their currency is so much better for spending, like, your currency is more volatile than Bitcoin. How could it possibly be better for spending? The Ripple people are out of control. Like, why is your Ripple token fluctuating in value? A stable coin would do such a better job inside the Ripple system. Like these people just don't understand. Same thing with Ethereum. Ethereum's value fluctuates way more than Bitcoin, and everything inside the Ethereum network is priced in the token of Ethereum. Like, none of this stuff makes any economic sense whatsoever. It's like the Russians and the Chinese seem to actually figured it out. You want to move the most stable value possible.
Precisely, and stability comes with network effects of liquidity. So right now, Bitcoin, among independent assets, is the only one with a liquidity that could eventually bring some stability. Of course.
Right. No, that's a good point. The most stable and liquid value possible. You want it to be, it's like a matrix. You want it to be as liquid as you can get and the most stable as you can get. And right now, Tether is king in this regard. So if you're actually moving money, you can move Tether, as long as you don't have to hold it in Tether for very long. As long as you have dealers on both sides that are willing to take that Tether. And I think it's large deals like this is what's been keeping Tether stable at $1, because there's no reason there's no reason for it to actually be $1 right now. It really should be less than $1. Other than very large players don't care about whether it's backed or not.
There is some irrationality in the market short term too, as well. But in the long term, I think the market shows some equilibrium rationality eventually. And so I think that, so again, I will not use Tether for saving money ever, because there is a lot of counterparty risk. But to move money, if you have an accounting problem, so if you cannot bear the volatility of Bitcoin, we have to admit that Tether has a use case for some people. Of course, it's a good use case as long as the dollar itself doesn't face any strong disaster. So if the dollar enters a very bad phase, which is something which is like a black swan that may happen eventually, in that case, I mean, maybe Tether will be the last of our problems in that case, because we will have a lot of geopolitical mess. But if the dollar enters a very bad phase, then Tether will just go down with it. Well, Bitcoin is a bet over independency of the asset, independence from central bank. The Fed can mess up the dollar, and can mess up the Tether dollar with it, while the Fed cannot mess up the Bitcoin monetary policy.
Hey, so not that I really care for another Bitcoin exchange being launched. I mean, these things are like mushrooms. They're popping up like every week. Another somebody else is launching a Bitcoin exchange. What bothers me, and well, like I honestly don't like anyone associated with Blockchain.info except for one person. I still call it Blockchain.info because you know we've been here long enough, right? Only one person I like at that entire company. You want to guess who that is, Giacomo?
Oh, still working there? I don't know. I would not be able to guess.
Well, wait a minute. He was in Odessa with us.
Ah, right. Yes. Okay. You shouldn't dox him, because the fact that he is considered and respected by me and by you may put him in a very bad situation inside Blockchain.info.
Oh yeah, that's true. Anyway, there's one person at Blockchain.info that I like. Everybody else, I can't stand. And my biggest problem with Blockchain.info is this. They are launching an exchange and they still have not added SegWit. Their CEO publicly stated on January 1st, guess what year? 2017. January 1st, 2017. He's coming up on 3 years. They said they were ready for SegWit, and they still have not added SegWit to their wallet. I mean, this is beyond ridiculous.
Yeah, the Blockchain.info, I think it was one of the biggest disappointments in the Bitcoin industry, because when it was launched, it was a great equilibrium between UX and technical capability. Every Bitcoin wallet back then was absolutely impossible to use, because it was you had to have your basically your laptop with different. It was before BIP32 hierarchical deterministic. So you didn't have just one seed generating your addresses. You had to keep a backup of all your private keys and public addresses in these .dat files. So it was super complicated to manage your wallet. And Blockchain.info provided a solution that was not as secure as custodian wallets like Coinbase and all the other custodian things, but it was not as bad UX-wise as a normal wallet on PC. So back in 2013, it was, I think, a very good compromise. Of course, many Bitcoin developers would be horrified by this compromise, but I think it was a good compromise. But then Roger's money entered, and they turned completely political, and they started to screw up entirely everything from security. I mean, as a blockchain explorer, which was their first mission, they screwed up so many times. They showed fake transaction from Satoshi's wallet. They messed up with the halvening, the last halving party. They messed up with the first halving transaction. They showed a lot of fake transaction. They weren't able to show SegWit for a while. They basically became political, and they started to support big cash propaganda, and they became completely technologically obsolete, which is a very bad thing. So also security-wise, they did a lot of nasty thing, which is completely crazy and disappointing.
All right, so we're gonna end it on this story, also provided to us by CoinDesk. The U.S. Defense Department to develop blockchain cybersecurity shield. I have to say, this headline made me chuckle a little bit. Now, reading it, of course, you don't have any details. It's almost like the Defense Department doesn't understand what a blockchain is. And this is ironic, considering half the people think that Satoshi is from the U.S. Defense Department and the CIA. So general thoughts, how the blockchain can create a cybersecurity shield for DARPA and the Defense Department.
So if you were in Odessa with me when I gave my talk, so the problem is that the word blockchain was completely desemantized. The semantic content was took and completely destroyed by marketing of random shit. So right now we have two options. Either we fight to get back a meaningful meaning of the word blockchain, or we give it up entirely. So since I'm getting old and tired, I'm a father now, my time preference is different. different. So I don't have time to fight this battle anymore. So I agree that now we can call blockchain any kind of computer software. So any computer software containing or not a database is now a blockchain. And so we will use time chain in order to address the actual Bitcoin blockchain, which creates a unique history, which is immutable, which works with proof of work and stuff like that. While anything else, people will be free to call it blockchain, whatever. Banking terminals are blockchain, and Pentagon system are blockchains, and it's all right. And let's leave it to them.
Sounds good. We'll leave it on that note. Giacomo, thank you so much for joining. We'll let you go. And
thank you. Bye.
Family to attend to. And hey, I'll see you in Vegas. You are going to come back to the Unconfiscatable conference.
With pleasure. With pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah, you had a great time there last year, right?
Yeah, it was great, and I will try to get better at poker before the next.
Anytime. So Giacomo was learning how to play poker on the flight to Vegas and outlasted Doug Polk, which is.
But next time will be better. Bye, Ton.
Bye, Giacomo. Yeah, hey guys. So the Unconfiscatable dates are set. Registration is not yet open. We want to update some of the graphics on this page. You can check out the pictures from last year. We have, oh, it looks like okay. Oh, no, speakers are right. We will update the speakers as well. Obviously, Tyler Jenks, so unfortunate. Tyler will not be with us this year. He absolutely loved it. You can check out the pictures. Lots of pictures of Tyler playing poker as well. There's Ugly Old Goat, trying to see if there is now, the pictures are, of course, on Daisy Coleman's website. She is the amazing and official photographer at all Tone Vase events. And we can probably find pictures of Tyler playing poker. He did pretty well. He outlasted half the field. There he is. There's Tyler playing poker right there with his hodl hat. Sitting next to a gentleman who made the final table. I think he knocked me out, actually. I finished in 9th place, ironically, considering I'm a TD guy. But yeah, there they are. You can check out the pictures from the poker game and from the conference itself. All right, that's Unconfiscatable. That's going to be in February. We do have the Financial Summit. The Financial Summit will take place in October at a very high-end resort in Bali. I understand that Bali is a little bit complicated to get to, especially from North America and even Western Europe. But please check it out. A lot of stuff will go. If this is a profitable event, we will donate as much as we can towards Tyler in some way. We're going to try and build a financial library. Some of it will go towards Tyler's widow and the family. So please check that out. If you want to present a potentially monetizable or profitable trading strategy during the conference, you can get a 50% discount because you are sharing something that with the audience. So this is going to be pretty interactive. Check out the description, read about it. The very nice high-end resort is included with the fee, with the registration. All you have to do is buy the flight, and everything else is taken care of, including your rides to and from the airport. It's only open to a maximum of 30 people. This is going to be a very small event. I'm going to be there. Ugly Old Goat's going to be there. Leah, Venzen. We're going to have some pictures of other notable attendees and potential educators. We want to make sure that you have a great time spending that time. It's pretty much like a vacation. This is what Willie, myself, Willie, and Venzen started doing in Asia like twice a year. And we decided to upgrade a little bit and open it up to the public. We understand it's a high price tag, but yeah, this is this is what I would like to do in order to keep attendance kind of small so you have access to people. It's really hard to talk to everybody if it's 100+ people. But you can do that at Unconfiscatable or Malta or perhaps other future events. All right, that's it for me. You can also, check out tonebase.com. There's a webinar coming up on money management. Look, guys, I'm not. It's up to you how you want to spend 0.05 Bitcoin. But money management is how ugly old goat turned 2 Bitcoin into 34 Bitcoin. It's not because he was picking the right direction of where Bitcoin price is going. It was mostly because of money management. So you really want to understand money management. It's ridiculously important. This webinar will take place this Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Okay, let's go to the price. I have to switch screen shares actually. That. All right, I was looking at some stocks. This stock came up this morning on our notification service. Now, for the notification, you can it's free for now, but we're gonna open subscriptions for that probably next month. We're gonna open it for subscription. And this came up. It was a 9 aggressive 13 that we just had a reversal candle and we had a sequential 13 the day before. Now, I understand that Allen Technologies, which I've never even really heard of, had bad earnings. But you know what? I trust the sequential. For me, this is a bullish trade. This trade would have activated to the upside right here, upon the break of that candle. Either the body or the shadow, it's up to you with your risk management. My initial stop loss, so the blue line isn't here yet because this needs to close as a 9. Now it's only 3 hours left. I'm pretty sure this is going, I know this is going to close as a 9. The only way this is not going to be a 9 is if this thing rallies all the way to like $275. That ain't happening in the next 3 hours. So you have 2 stop loss choices here. Your initial stop loss can either be just below the swing low, or it's going to be double that distance, which is where the risk line is going to be based on sequential. Either way, once this thing is profitable, you want to set that break-even stop loss, maybe take some profit, and then see if you can close the gap. I really want to look at Netflix. We'll look at Bitcoin in a second. I don't know why I'm on stocks right now. Netflix has pulled back. My stop loss would already be hit. As much as I wanted this 9 to turn into a full-blown correction, to the correction, I mean like rally to the upside, this is now clear to me that this 9 is more likely a 1 to 4 candle correction followed by the countdown phase. This would have absolutely gotten me out of all long trades as a swing trader on Netflix. I would now be considering short trades. The short trade was actually there earlier this morning, but I wasn't looking at it. It's probably a little too late. I would be a little more cautious on shorting Netflix at this moment in time. I would rather wait and short it in the $300 area as it starts to break this low. Now, it needs to do it in an orderly fashion. I would rather have this thing slow down and make a descending triangle around 300, and then Netflix could have one hell of a fall here. There's really not much support all the way down to the prior swing low. So Netflix is in a bit of trouble with this candle. Now, I can't assume that we're going to go lower than 300 at this point. But if I was actively long in a Netflix trade and I saw what happened this morning, opening on this big down gap with weakness after 10 a.m., assuming it didn't run away from me at 10 a.m., I can look at the 10-minute candles and I can tell you what I would have done. Obviously, I would have been out of this damn thing around the time of the open and no later than 10 a.m. I'm going to move to the 10-minute chart. And if it rallied and started to reverse at 10 a.m., I would have been interested in a short trade because of the sequential, because this 9 I am now convinced it's a 1-4 candle correction followed by the countdown phase, and the countdown phase has 13 candles in it, right? We can try to find the last time this happened. I mean, here it is to the upside, right? Here is the big up move. Here is a 9 at the bottom that reversed Netflix. It went up and made a 9. It did not even correct. Once you recognize that it's entered the countdown phase, no matter where you got in on this, unless you got in at the very top, right? So except these candles, I mean, I wouldn't have gotten in here because it's, earnings time. But even if you're getting in after this pullback, you're getting in around 6 or 7 or 8 on a countdown phase, you're waiting for the 13. Here is the 13. You made another 9 along the way. And now you've entered another countdown phase. Granted, you didn't make much money in Netflix, but you also didn't lose. That's when it finally ended. I can try to find the 13, go into the bottom. Here's the 13. Where is the 9 that got you here? That was actually this 9. As you can see, this is pretty similar, right? Like the market bounced off of this 9. Actually, no, I'm mistaken. This 13 is coming from, this was the first 9. So this was a very similar situation. You can see Netflix tops on this 9, breaks setup trend, gets to a 9, has a 1-4 candle correction. Now I know earnings got in the way, but sequential doesn't care about earnings. A 1-4 candle correction, similar to what we have now. And then you enter the countdown phase. So here is that same line. What I'm saying is, either you recognize that the 1-4 candle correction has ended and you're entering your short trades somewhere around this area here, like this vicinity of $350. But if you missed it, I would then wait for Netflix to break the swing low. Then you get to enter it again on a break of swing low. Now, you can say, oh my God, why are you so late to the short trade? But that's because I have confidence in two things. One, the countdown phase is only getting started and it has to get me to a 13. Two, I love shorting the swing low. Ugly disagrees with me here. He likes to go long a new two-week low. I don't. I like to short swing lows, especially when they're double lows, okay? And especially when, you're breaking all the moving averages. So to me, that's the Netflix short. This is similar to the current situation. And then you had a 9 here, which probably gets you out of the short trade. But then when this 9 played out its short-term correction and started to turn, now you have two countdowns. This was the ending of the first one, and this was the ending of the second one. We hit another upwards 9 and reversed. Okay. Okay, let's look at Bitcoin. We're already an hour into the show. I mean, this rejection at the 200-day is critical. This was a rough spot. The candle closed strong, but this week has not started off very strong. And it's time to take profit from your swing Netflix long and potentially look for a short. But I wouldn't short it here. At this point, I almost have to wait for the swing low. But those of you that did recognize the 1-4 candle correction ending could have shorted earlier today. I thought Ugly Old Goat liked to go long when a new 2-week low is established. I'll have to double check with him on that. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong on that. Hey, Fabric, thank you so much for your generous donation. It was a great show with Leah. Really, that one really hit home. Okay, Bitcoin. Okay. Ooh, this looks good. So I drew in another set of Fibonacci's. I don't really, man, the chart's getting really cluttered. I almost want to drop the other ones because now that this high has been established, I don't really want those Fibonacci's. I mean, I don't think they're that relevant anymore. I'm gonna drop these. I can always draw them back in. I like this better. We've broken the 38% Fibonacci, and at this point, the most likely outcome is the 62% Fibonacci. Now, this is a good start to a week. I'm happy about that, and those of you that pay attention to sequential knew that, hey, the Bitcoin drop is getting exhausted. Now it's also forming a descending-ish triangle. We will see how this works out, but it's not a perfect descending triangle. And people have asked me about it before. It's not a perfect one, but it has, the spirit of a descending triangle. Now, what do I want to see? To be honest, I want to see Bitcoin go to new all-time highs. I really, really do. I want to be rich too, okay? The probability, however, at the moment, unless Bitcoin is breaking this green line at $1,100-ish, it's more likely that it's going to break down below 9, okay? So adjust your timeframes accordingly. Is there a bullish trade right now in Bitcoin? Potentially. Off of this 9, I trust it. We have a 9. We can have a 1 to 4 candle correction unless this correction to the upside from this downtrend goes above the $11,000 swing high. You have to look at it as a dead cat bounce. And if it makes a lower high somewhere in the 10,000 something range and starts to pull back down towards 9, then it will create a descending triangle. And you guys know the last time there was a high level descending triangle. Things ended very, very badly. So if over the rest of, this is on a daily scale, it won't be that big, right? But in a scenario where, Bitcoin, say, rises up to 10,500 over the next week or two, then falls back down to 9 by the end of August or by the next week or two, then goes back up to 10, then goes back to 9, then goes up to 9.5. I mean, this descending triangle could take another month and change to form. And if it does, I will be extremely bearish at 9K because that's the floor that's more likely to be broken. In order to avoid this, Bitcoin needs to make a new high. Bitcoin has not been able to do that, okay? It almost made a new high. It made a new high on a closing basis, which made me bullish, but it reversed right there off the 12-hour 9. And I need to see a high above 11,000. If Bitcoin breaks 11,000 and sustains it, I will be a bull. Until it does that, I have to assume we're going to make a lower swing high. Just like I was assuming right here, we're going to be making a lower swing high unless it proves it to me and closes above 11,000. Go back to the video on this day. I specifically said if Bitcoin can close the day above 11,000, and it did not, okay? Bitcoin went up to 11,100 and it closed the day under 11,000. I needed a close above 11 and then the break of that day's high the following day. If Bitcoin has started another bull trend already, how long can each pullback last? That is a good question. This is the longest pullback we've had so far, assuming Bitcoin has started a new bullish trend. Now, this pullback has now lasted, how many days has it lasted? June 24th to August 2nd. It has now lasted for about 5 weeks and a little bit more, okay? Well, it's not August 2nd yet, sorry, 1 week less, okay? It has lasted for 5 weeks. It can last a while because we have not had any pullbacks this year. Nothing worthy of, for me, nothing worthy to, buy the dip on. So we're a little bit overdue. So the low was in December. I mean, it took us 6 months to get to the high. So a 2 month, about a third of the time, 2 to 3 months is reasonable for a good pullback in terms of time. Okay, that's pretty much it for me, guys. We can look at the 4-hour chart, see if there's anything interesting going on there. There really isn't. I drew this line last time. You can see how we're not closing below this line. We do need to close below this line and below the setup trend line, and then I think things can really accelerate. We're also in this descending channel, okay? Even if Bitcoin goes all the way up and breaks 11,000, it still has this channel to deal with. Now, this channel meets 11,000 in the second half of August. So we'll really want to see what happens there. Am I using a 3-day chart? I did not even know that. Oh, that's a good question. I'm using a 3-day chart because someone asked me to look at it in the next video, and I didn't realize this was a 3-day chart. But Bitcoin is on a 9 on a daily chart as well, which is what confused me because I knew Bitcoin was on a 9 daily today. It so happens that Bitcoin is also on a 9 using a 3-day. I don't really know why I used the 3-day. Someone asked me to look at it. I don't normally look at the 3-day, but thank you for the heads up. So using the daily chart, Bitcoin has not made a new closing low. It has also not made a new swing low. Bitcoin still, this was the swing low, and that was the new closing low. On a daily scale, we're looking at a 1 to 4 candle correction. If it stays under the setup trend line that just emerged, that just formed, and under this moving average, once again, this is that descending triangle that could be forming here. Okay, it's still too early to call it a descending triangle, however. The hourly chart is usually not interesting to me, and we're going to leave it there. All right, that's it. I do like to keep an eye on the dollar. I've been eyeing the euro like a hawk. I'm waiting for the euro to break the setup trend line and accelerate to the downside. Hasn't happened yet. Gold's been doing well. So gold looks good to the upside for now. It's just a bit of a weird move to me personally. That's it, guys. I think Litecoin and Ethereum are about to turn back down as well versus Bitcoin. The S&P is probably having a pullback day. It is. It broke the count. The longer we consolidate at the top, the more bullish that is to me, to be honest with you guys. And but the daily is coming up on a weekly 9, so you want to be careful. All right, that's it for the markets. I'll leave it there. Once again, hey guys, check out tonevase.com. We are going to make some changes to the website as well. And check out the conferences. Well, the Understanding Bitcoin hasn't been updated yet. We don't have dates yet. It'll probably be in May after consensus. Unconfiscatable has dates. Check that out. And the Financial Summit in Bali. This is for high net worth individuals, full-time traders, and money managers looking to find good trading talent. That's what I'm trying to connect with this event, the Financial Summit in Bali. If you want to support this channel, please use the affiliates. And I still don't know where I'm going in October. I'm still dealing with it, but check out the calendar. I think by August, which is in 2 days, I need to decide what my travels are. There's nothing going on here, but you can see in August, I will be in Toronto for Futurist, then Dallas for BitBlock Boom. There is an in-person workshop in Dallas, potentially one of my very last ones. Maybe I'll do one once a month at most, maybe once a quarter. We will see. Okay. And October is still totally up in the air. I got like 4 conferences waiting for me to say yes to, and I don't know where I'm actually going to go yet. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all on the next one. Bye, guys.